The price of freedom is eternal vigilance.
You're going to do all right on the Fourth and Fifth Amendments. Anything else?
Well, I'm not really confident about the first.
Okay. Give me a situation.
All right. How about Lynch versus Donnelly? Public funds are used to build a nativity scene for a downtown exhibit. The ACLU claims flagrant violation of separation between church and state, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. Publicly funded religious observances are a direct violation of Jefferson's wall of separation between church and state. Pretty basic stuff, Jackie.
Really? Where was Jefferson's wall when he ordered Bibles and hymnals placed in D.C. public schools?
And it was practices like that which Madison criticized.
The same Madison who issued prayer proclamations and drafted a plan to pay Army chaplains?
The point is, government's endorsement of organized religion is a threat to personal liberties. I mean, we're on the brink of a government-endorsed one-religion state.
Objection! Really, there's not one shred of evidence to support that. Madison and Jefferson sponsored and funded religious activities because they understood such acts don't constitute the establishment of religion. Public servants today still have the same right of expression.
So do you have a solution, counselor?
Tolerance. It's the only way we can protect against a one-religion state without discriminating against all of them.
You'll do fine.
One thing, though, Jackie.
Do you ever really think about it?
About mixing religion and politics?
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes. It really scares me.
Freedom to practice and share one's religion is fundamental to our heritage, and yet the subject is rarely discussed. Contemporary attitudes about religion, morality, entire belief systems seem to be formed passively, usually in front of this. Information comes pre-processed and pre-packaged in sitcoms, soaps, and the 6 o'clock news. Hard facts lose their relevance in a universe dominated by incomplete information. Few are courageous enough to question their own opinions. To do so is to risk the experience of considerable discomfort and probable criticism. But the reward for this adventure in truth and honesty is the inevitable rediscovery of constitutional genius and the ties that bind us together forever as family.
And now, Assault on Freedom, a documentary on freedom and justice. For the next 60 minutes, you'll witness the powerful and compelling drama of freedom in action.
In matters of religion, I have considered that its free exercise is placed by the Constitution independent of the powers of the general government.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
America, America, God shed his grace on thee. Thank you again.
Assault on Freedom. The struggle for individual freedom. The triumph of the human spirit. Assault on Freedom. A proclamation of liberty.
The many great moments that have united us in the past seem like ancient history when family feuds divide. Today, a battle rages among us in which, as one observer put it, not even a 40-year-old baby Jesus is safe.
40 years ago, the city of Pawtucket, Rhode Island, erected a Christmas display, which included a nativity scene in one of the town's parks. In 1984, the lower courts determined that the nativity scene violated the principle of church and state separation. Although the Supreme Court has since ruled that the Christmas setting is a proper observance of a traditional holiday, there is continued resistance to such toleration of religious displays in public places.
About a week before Christmas in 1980, the mayor of the city of Pawtucket, Mayor Lynch, called me in with reference to a case that had just been filed, and a restraining order had been requested against the maintenance of the city's nativity scene, which had been displayed for approximately 40 years by the city.
We received a complaint from a resident of Pawtucket in 1980 who was concerned that the city was, in fact, sponsoring a nativity scene display as part of a larger Christmas display. We did some investigation and found out that, in fact, it was the city's own display. It used city workers to put it up. City money had been used to pay for it. And it was our feeling that city sponsorship of a clearly sectarian display, like a nativity scene, violated the First Amendment and the principle of separation of church and state.
During the trial, since it occurred in February and it was impossible to actually go and to view the display, which by that time had been dismantled, both sides, through photographs, attempted to emphasize certain aspects of what the city was sponsoring. The plaintiffs presented pictures of the nativity scene almost in isolation, as though what the city was doing was simply sponsoring a nativity scene. We, on the other hand, introduced photographs which showed the entire display, including lights and trees and Santa Claus and snowmen and Christmas carolers and a banner declaring season's greetings, in order to demonstrate that what we were doing was celebrating a public holiday and not simply displaying a religious symbol in isolation.
I had to oppose the attempt to foster non-religion on people. I mean, how do you expect, in my opinion, how do you expect any mayor to not announce or acknowledge a holiday in a truthful fashion? The ACLU is fond of having a great many cases in the censorship area. But now they expect me to censor Christmas, Christ Mass, 1984, a long tradition in this country. Suddenly I am to remove an element of that display. No way. And that's basically what the Supreme Court said.
At the heart of this controversy is the question of a government's role in resolving the conflict. No understanding of the problem can be complete without reviewing what the Founding Fathers felt about the involvement of national government in the affairs of religion.
In framing a government which is to be administered by men, over men, the great difficulty lies in this. You must first enable the government to control the governed, and in the next place, oblige it to control itself.
In questions of powers, then, let no more be heard of confidence in man, but bind him down from mischief by the chains of the Constitution.
To obtain religious as well as civil liberty, I entered zealously into the Revolution, and observing the Christian religion divided into many sects, I founded hope that no one would be so predominant as to be the religion of the state.
Charles Carroll, the only Roman Catholic to sign the Declaration of Independence, did so to promote religious tolerance in America. This attitude is widely documented among the men who gave birth to this country, including ardent separationists like Madison and Jefferson. Many contemporary Americans think of Jefferson's wall of separation between church and state as a sort of battle line. Any religious activity inside government territory is a truce violation. Government incorporation, auditing, and taxation of churches is penetration from the other side. Evidence shows that early American public officials placed more importance on tolerance and accommodation than on the fortification of symbolic walls. One can only wonder what would happen if that same spirit of accommodation and tolerance was operative in our land today.
The state of Alabama currently has a law which allows a moment of meditation in public schools. Many teachers have accepted this practice and believe the federal government has no right to abolish a state law like this one. However, there are those like Ishmael Jaffrey who believe even a moment of private meditation promotes religion and therefore is a violation of the First Amendment.
Early spring of 1982, Mr. Ishmael Jaffrey, who's a parent in the Mobile County school system, Mobile, Alabama, asked the teachers no longer pray with his children prior to giving grace, prior to lunch or whatever period of the day, the opening exercises of the day. Mr. Jaffray subsequently brought a suit against these teachers, each of the 3 teachers for his 3 kids, for $115,000 each, and sought an injunction from the school system asking them to prohibit the teachers from praying with his children.
Naturally inquisitive children will bring up, well, Ms. Phillips, I was baptized yesterday. Have you ever been baptized? Or, Ms. Phillips, my grandmother is sick. Can you pray for her? Children will come to their teacher with questions like that, and for me to have to be afraid that I may offend some parent by simply answering questions honestly.
And the right of my clients that have been violated is the right to be able to have free exercise of religion in a public place, that is, in a public school system. My clients are simply asking for the opportunity to, first, be able to voice or verbalize religious views in public, and secondly, to be able to have a time of prayer.
The whole issue is whether or not a certain group of religious fanatics will be able to, I guess, make this initial intrusion on our civil liberties, and that is our liberty to be free from state-imposed prayers in the public schools.
So the basis for our going to the state legislature and asking for a law with a moment of silence is to say, because we believe that the state of Alabama has always had that right and forever will have the right to be able to pass laws dealing with religion. That was something that was left to the states and never taken away by the federal government.
Government acts which suppress such expressions of free exercise violate both constitutional guarantees and existing high court rulings. In 1963, Justice Tom Clark warned, the state may not establish a religion of secularism in the sense of affirmatively opposing or showing hostility to religion, thus preferring those who believe in no religion over those who do believe. Tolerance of free expression was fought for and founded by the constitutional fathers. It can work again, but only if we fight for it.
The current religious freedom issue is sparking interest across the nation. For many, it represents a first exposure to confrontations connected with the expression of constitutional liberties. Most are coming to realize that conclusions about this complex and sensitive issue can only be reached by putting biases and preconceived notions aside. For the concerned American, it may well be the time to listen, decide, and act.
Coming up, the Battle of Louisville, the story of a church that was padlocked.
Up until a few years ago, I never thought much about religious freedom, until I got a family. For some reason, I began to wonder what it would be like to raise children in a society where religion didn't exist. No choice, no faith, no base for morality. When I started to look for a place to enroll my children in religious education, I was surprised to find how hard it was to discuss this subject with my friends. But the most shocking thing I discovered was how the freedom of religious expression had diminished over the years. And that's when I got concerned. Not just concerned, but involved. I really hope you'll believe me when I say that we're at a crossroads in our country. We're seeing things today you won't believe happen in America, but they do. As concerned citizens and concerned parents, we need to become more involved in the decisions that affect the preservation of our precious freedoms. For ourselves, for our children.
There are always politicians who will promise security and efficiency in exchange for freedom. But freedom is something you never give up for anything else.
I think the church needs to recognize that there is a problem. I think they need to see the possibilities. I think they need to see the very real fact that they may not even be able to worship. Oh, sure, they can tell you in other countries that they have religious freedom, but it's a lie. And so many of them, they don't have freedom to express themselves. They can believe anything they want to. They just can't practice it. So I think what Christian people need to do and religious people need to do is begin to speak out for their liberty. And I think they need to do it together. I think they need to stand together as one.
When the laws of man and God collide, violence is often inevitable. The dramatic and unbelievable events that took place at Faith Baptist Church in Louisville, Nebraska between 1981 and 1984 have created a point of unity for religious groups of the most diverse and theologically incompatible persuasions. At stake, the most fundamental elements of free religious expression for all.
In 1933, Hitler said that when he controlled the education of the children, he could calmly say to any opponent, "Your child belongs to us already. What are you?" In 1936, he abolished Christian schools in Germany.
This is not America. How could it be? Oh, my God. My God.
Glad I don't draw you men's paychecks.
Oh, God. Do you men have a conscience? Do you men realize what you're doing under God, under heaven? God save America. Oh, my God, my God.
For refusing to turn over control of a church school to the state, a Nebraska pastor was arrested on September 3rd, 1982.
Well, when the sheriff arrested me for the first time, I was shocked. It was unbelievable to think that law officers would come into the church and actually take people who are not committing crimes. The church has always been a sanctuary, and I suppose it took really about a day for it to sink in.
Reverend Silverman in? Not
Well, if you tell me what you're here for, I'll be glad to go with you. Am I under arrest?
You are under arrest. I have a warrant for your arrest.
All right, Sheriff. Let me say this, Sheriff, to my kids. Now, kids, we're not mad at the sheriff. He's just doing what he's told to do. And so I don't want you to be mad at him, okay? All right. All right. Can we go out this way?
Okay.
All right.
This man is being arrested for running a church school where the students have consistently scored higher on statewide achievement tests than children attending local public schools.
I was watching them at this moment take my husband away and put him in jail for teaching our boys and girls about Christ. And so that was not ringing true.
It hurt me to see that my dad was looked at as a villain when I knew him to be one of the most kind men I have ever known, to be really concerned about the children and the people in this church. And yet people who didn't even know him were writing him up as if he were a criminal. A judge was sentencing him to jail as though he were a rapist or a murderer. He would share a cell with someone who had stolen and destroyed property, and within a few days they would be out, but he was still serving a sentence.
My days were really heavy because therefore I had to take care of his office and my office, and much media was around, and so my days were very heavy, and so at nights I was quite tired, and I thought, well, I will just go off to sleep. But then again, when you lay your arm over, or you are used to laying in someone's arm at night, it was quite lonely.
When I found out that the pastor had gone to jail, I felt kind of angry because he was trying to teach us how to do right, and he went to jail for that.
And so I would write 10 to 12 page letters daily to him to encourage him and to keep him up on the news. I would write and brag on him and love him through my letters. I would send him fruit and send little notes in his pockets when I would wash his clothes, little love notes. And when he would put on this pair of pants and stick his hands in the pockets, there he'd find a note.
Right. Judge Case is a lawbreaker.
That's right.
He has trampled upon the Constitution of the United States and upon the Constitution of this state of Nebraska. That's
right. The word of God.
1 month after jailing the pastor, Sheriff Tetch returned to empty and padlock the church by force because members refused to compromise their religious and constitutional rights.
This order directs me to secure this building with locks so as to prevent holding school in the building without following the state law requiring a certified teacher. But at this time, I and members of Nebraska State Patrol will escort you from this building so we can comply with this order signed by the judge. Put them back and close one door.
You are damn right. Do you men have a conscience? Do you men realize what you're doing under God, under heaven?
Well, the judge has always been against this, and he's not one time been here. He's always sending the sheriff down here or something like that. And I'd wish if he was really going to condemn us like that he'd come down here and see what's happening. And then I wish he'd go to the public schools and see what's happening. This will be the first year, God willing, that we'll be able to have a full year of school.
The change of events that brought the legislature to change the law, basically I think the primary part played in that was the parents. When the men went to jail and the women were exiled from their own homes with their children, that was the initial turning point in my thinking.
When I learned that my husband was in jail, first I cried because I thought, why? But then I realized, well, our preacher had been there before, and it did not surprise us, but yet it hurt us.
The message I would like to give Americans is this: let's stop giving away our religious liberty, our constitutional liberties. Let's continue to practice them. Let's stand for them in spite of what the cost may be. Eventually, the government is going to give up trying to do all this regulation if we will only be persistent.
This is Grandpa. He's not with us anymore. When he left, he told me I'd meet him someday in a place called heaven. Becky, my best friend, doesn't believe in heaven. That's okay. We're still best friends anyway. My grandpa was a very special person. He liked to talk about life on the farm and fishing in Alaska and his faith. He always talked about his faith. He said that we're awful lucky in America because we can talk about it anytime, any place. He used to go visit people in the hospitals. Sometimes I go to the park with him when he went to talk to the old people. I loved it when he did that because it made them so happy. My mother says Grandpa's example is part of my legacy. I sure hope our country keeps giving us the right to be like Grandpa. I sure would like to leave a legacy too.
I have been a forward-thinking individual. I am not so concerned about 1984. I am concerned about the 21st century. That's only a little over 15 years away. And I don't mean to sound an ominous chord, dear friends, but if we have as many or as the percentage of religious freedom attacks in the next 15 years that we have had in the past 15 years, we will no longer have religious freedom in America.
America, home of the free and the brave. Free unless perhaps you are part of a small independent church school in suburban Milwaukee. Neither the tradition of religious freedom or its name, Christian Liberty Academy, seem to have any effect on local IRS officials committed to a total involvement with the life of that religious group.
So the best defense we felt was to show them that we were a church. And we invited them out to a chapel service of our school. And so they heard the gospel, they heard singing and prayer, and they saw the children, they saw the building.
This church was never charged throughout the entire process. We were taken into federal district court, where we of course won. We were taken into the circuit court level, where we lost our case, and even under the appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court.
The IRS uses the drastic methods that it does to investigate churches like this. First of all, let's take the churches like this, because it's a small church. It is not a part of a broad denomination. It's subject to attack and to the establishment of precedent without generating a great deal of opposition nationwide and without bringing focus upon the activities of the IRS.
Christian Liberty Academy's troubles began in 1977 when the IRS wanted to know if blacks were attending their school. Pastor Dykema states, the IRS quickly saw that we have several races in our student body. Soon after that investigation, the IRS initiated an effort to secure all the church records.
They mounted what we've called a fishing expedition. They didn't have any charge against us. They never had any charge at any time. But they simply demanded to see every record that we have, and including our creeds, our bulletins, correspondence, and so on, and we felt that this was not right.
One of the things that we had asked of the IRS when they were here was whether or not, for example, counseling records, if any, would be subject to IRS inspection. And the agent nodded in assent.
We finally were summoned to an IRS hearing, which is not a legal summons. It's not a summons of a duly constituted court, but I went to it anyway as the pastor. And I went empty-handed. And they met with me, and I described to them the biblical reasons that we could not show our records, that the church is ruled by Christ alone, and it's not subject to the king. It's under the law of God and not under man's caprice.
In the ensuing months, the IRS again summoned Pastor Dykema to appear, but this time held the church in non-compliance. The IRS came to the church again, and once more, Pastor Dykema refused to turn over congregational records. At this point, the IRS took Christian Liberty Academy to federal district court, and the judge ruled in favor of the church. The IRS appealed to the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals in Chicago, where the lower court ruling was overturned in favor of the IRS.
To bludgeon our little ministry, to attack our little ministry, was merely to establish a legal precedent against churches.
And by the terms of this decision, it gives the government authority to say what will and will not be considered a church.
Attorney John Coutura appealed to the Supreme Court of the United States to overturn the lower court's decision, but their case was denied and never heard by the High Court.
But it would have been much easier to just give in. But that's true all down the line, true of business, true of education. It's easier often just to give what the government demands. Just let it go. Why fight it, Pay a little more money and let it go until finally there's nothing left.
New legislation will lighten the burden in future church audits. No such help is in sight, however, for victims of overreactive social service agencies convinced of the state's right to define acceptable parental behavior, even when the behavior in question involves closely held religious beliefs.
Nancy Daughtry and her husband were missionaries to Honduras for 4 years. When they returned to America, Nancy kept her 4 children out of public schools to teach them at home. When her husband became ill, she began to fast and pray for God's guidance. Her mother and father-in-law, however, told the state authorities Nancy was starving herself to death and neglecting her children. As a result, all 4 children were taken from their home. Unbelievably, the in-laws refused to take care of the children, so they were placed in state foster homes, where they remain today.
I knew that in my heart I had not done anything wrong, that I had given the very best to raising my children, so I didn't want to go, of course, but the 2 policemen picked me up and dragged me out of the house and put me in the police car. My 7-year-old came out of the house and he was crying. No, he called me, and I called back at him, and somebody came out and took him back in the house. They wouldn't let me say one word to him. I didn't know where they were taking me, and I was talking to the policeman and the policewoman in the front seat, and I was trying to find out, where we were going. They wouldn't tell me. And I finally figured out when we got to Sarasota what this place was, and it was kind of humorous to me. I said, "You're taking me to a mental hospital," and, I knew that there was nothing wrong with me.
Her children are very close, very devoted to their mother. And they get that devotion because she gives it to them. She's extremely dedicated to her children. She always has been.
Nancy has never been away from her children one night in her life. She's never neglected her children. She's always cared for her children and loved her children. If you would see Nancy with her children, there would be no doubt in anyone's mind that this is a loving, caring Christian mother.
She was subsequently discharged from that psychiatric hospital with a finding that she was not psychotic, which came as a surprise to no one that knew Nancy. She still had to go through the humiliation of being admitted to that hospital and spending 10 days there, which time she was subjected to all kinds of psychiatric evaluations and medical tests. The precise statement that HRS raised was that Nancy was prepared to die today or tomorrow. That, nothing more, was the basis for the action that was taken.
The issues are religion. They have said that she's a fanatic, that she's willing to die today or tomorrow, and every Christian should have that type of commitment. We all know we're going to die. The question is when. She says, "I'm ready to meet God." And the great desire is that she may also have her children ready to meet the Lord. And since stripping her of her children, which literally is an insane act by the HRS, and to force her to live without those 4 children is beyond belief for we who are Christians. The real issue is religion.
I've had everything that I've loved on this earth ripped away from me. And the only thing that, I was in the, when I was in Palms, Karen Beard, the social worker, took me in this room, and she said, "Nancy, what would you do if the state said you could never see your husband again?" And I'd say, "Well, that's the way it is." And she'd say, "Nancy, what would you do if the state said you could never see your children again?" And I'd say, "Well, if that's the way it's going to be, then so be it." And she said, "What would the state do if what would you do if the state said you could never see your friend Wendy again?" And I'd say, "Well," I said, "if that's what the state's going to do, then let them." I said, "But I'll tell you one thing." I said, and I looked her right in the eye and I pointed my finger. I said, "You can't take away my God."
Listen, I know exactly what you're thinking. Who are you supposed to believe? You hear one thing and now you hear something else. When it comes to so-called controversial subjects like religious freedom, it's really hard to get beyond the headlines. And if you're like me, you digest your news in bits and pieces. I read the newspaper on the run, I listen to radio news commuting to work, and I catch glimpses of the evening news between household chores. It's not a very good way to form opinions on the really important issues of the day. Obviously, subjects as important as religious liberty deserve more serious attention. So when a related story hits the news, I don't rely on coverage that's been sensationalized to sell newspapers and boost TV ratings anymore. Now I get the story behind the headlines. the one that never makes the evening news. I've become involved and found that together, you and I can protect the vital freedoms we all share.
In November 1982, New Calvary Baptist Church in Norfolk, Virginia was in turmoil. 2 dissident members had brought suit against the church in order to obtain an audit of church finances and the resignation of their pastor. As early as December that year, an audit was made available to church members in good standing. But because the 2 dissidents were not in good standing, a second suit was filed in late 1983. As a result, the court appointed an overseer, not affiliated with the church in any way, to conduct its annual business meetings.
In November of '82, during our annual meeting, a group of dissident members of the church sought to disrupt the meeting.
Most of the people who rebelled against the authority in the church were people who disagreed with his philosophy. They also objected to his given authority as pastor to set forth the program of the church.
And they went to court the next day, asking the judge to set a meeting so they could have their agenda on the meeting, and asking for 2 things: the report of the finances and the resolution of the pastor to be done by secret ballot.
We do not have a majority that is creating these problems. This is a small band of approximately 30 individuals out of a congregation that is in excess of 800. Yet the courts have allowed them to bring their suit and has ruled in their favor in the lower court.
But the judge said, no, you can't silence these people. They got a right to speak. And he sets up an agenda and so forth, and leads to the appointment of an overseer in an ex parte hearing. We weren't even there. He came marching in with the deputy sheriff on the night of our annual meeting. We had about 300 members who had signed up for the annual meeting, dinner meeting. And here comes the overseer. So we promptly called the meeting off.
The fundamental issue is as simple as separation of church and state. We have, in the New Calvary case, an unprecedented appointment of an overseer to run the annual meeting of the church in the absence of any dispute over property.
It has escalated because every time the judge has ordered the court, the church to do something, the church has not done it. The dissidents have taken it back to court. The judge has ordered it to be done again, and it has come back to the church and has been done. But in March of this year, the judge said, hey, I'm tired. I'm just a little tired of this. So I want the membership list. I want the church to meet. And if you don't turn the membership list over, Dr. Reed, I'm going to fine you $100 a day. And you deacons, I'm going to fine you $25 a day.
The church met on 2 different occasions and voted overwhelmingly not to turn its membership list over to any secular authority.
The membership list should not even be requested, because if all the dissidents know the membership, they could supply it. But the authority want to extract from the pastor of the church. The last leader that the black community has is its minister. They want to humiliate him, have him grovel in the dust and bring his membership list and turn in his people. But the black minister, born of God, has never done that.
After a couple of weeks, the court decided to fine me $1,000 a day and to fine the deacons $25 a day. And he said that the money cannot come from the church. It has to come from me.
We cannot remain silent in the face of the deafening sound of religious persecution. For when the voice of religion is silenced, sticks and stones cry out. When prophets are silenced, swords will preach. How can the lovers of peace hear without the voice of the preacher? When the message of love and justice is muffled, sabers will rattle, missiles will murmur, battleships will blast. Governments that fear truth fear free religion. Governments that embrace the sword put braces on religion. We're here to proclaim that free religion preserves a government free from tyranny.
Those who perceive the winds of religious oppression as insignificant or inconsequential do well to remember a similar moment in our recent past. The notion that any segment of society could be suddenly hauled away and locked up because of a common race, creed, or religion is unthinkable, impossible. But to thousands of Japanese Americans who endured the humiliation of confinement in relocation camps during World War II, it is not only a possibility, but a reality. What made this possible? Public opinion, fueled by mass hysteria that was rooted in fear, ignorance, and intolerance. Public sentiment was so strong against the Asian Americans that the Supreme Court finally agreed to authorize confinement. In attempting to justify its action, the court declared that as a race, Japanese Americans had demonstrated an inability to remain loyal to the United States government.
We were all interned, 120,000 of us, in internment camps throughout the United States. We were uprooted from our families and neighborhoods. I was born and raised in Sacramento. I was 6 months old at the time, and obviously I wasn't given a trial nor any charges were imposed against me, but for the next 2.5 years, I, my mother, father, and sister were interned in barbed wire camps in the United States of America.
Lieutenant General J.L. DeWitt issued the order to relocate the Japanese, as nearly 100,000 persons were uprooted and forced into camps far from home, some for years. DeWitt warned the American public to, quote, worry about the Japanese all the time until he is wiped off the map, end quote. The only charge against these people, potential disloyalty, against which no law exists. Throughout the entire period of confinement, not one resident Japanese American was ever convicted of sabotage or espionage, although many white persons were. Fear, ignorance, and intolerance are still as powerful now as they were then. Could large religious groups, disloyal to officially sanctioned forms of religious worship, be the next to reside in concentration camps? Shocking parallels between America 1984 and pre-Nazi Germany indicate that the barbed wire may already be in place.
You and I are the only ones who can prevent another tragedy like this. Not once has apathy ever checked such forces of blind intolerance or government grown heavy-handed. Once again, it's time to act, and this is your opportunity. Don't waste it.
In 1982, Reverend Sun Myung Moon was convicted of income tax evasion in a trial that has been called a tragedy of American injustice. The facts have generated an avalanche of support for the convicted religious leader from church and civil rights groups around the country. Though many supporters do not agree with the teachings of Moon and his church, there is unanimous concern over the proceedings of the case and precedents set by the trial court.
The jailings of ministers are especially disturbing to me. Here we are actually putting men of cloth, as it were, behind bars right here in the 20th century. It's more than disturbing to me. I think it's alarming. This isn't the Soviet Union, isn't Poland, it isn't Afghanistan. This is the United States of America.
Well, you know, there are many people who try to think that it's just those who are the extremists, the cultists, or whatever you would want to call them. But yet the truth of the matter is there's an attack on all religious freedom. And I cannot selectively decide whose religious freedom I think the government ought to guarantee or the Constitution ought to guarantee. Everybody's religious freedom is at stake. And if one man loses his freedom, then I've lost mine.
Now, in the United States, a court has decided what is proper religious practice for a church. Who and what will be next? Will a court decide you cannot pray in your church as you wish? That you cannot give your pastor or priest a gift of appreciation? So radical and dangerous is the precedent of this case that dozens of religious groups across America filed friend of the court briefs calling for this case to be overturned.
They did not give him the trial that he requested. They forced him to take a trial that his lawyers didn't want to take. Namely, he wanted a trial which is called a bench trial at the law. That means only before the judge. They didn't want a jury trial. The government forced a jury trial.
The jury decided what is religion, what is not the religion, and how church must be organized, how church must be run. This is not the business of jury. The First Amendment guarantees that absolute religious freedom. Now that the jury come out say what is right or right or wrong religion, how the church is going to be conducted, and that point on, the religious freedom in this country is ended up in a trash can.
We not only have a jury trial imposed upon the defendant against his will, feeling that he probably could not get a fair jury trial, but imposed for what really are frivolous reasons, or should I say a frivolous reason. And then on top of that, we have a judge directing the jury itself to not give any consideration to religious reasons.
The Moon case involved, apart from other aspects of it, involved a very dangerous principle that the state, the court, can decide what the religious view of a religion is. They can decide what your religious belief is, and they can tell you that a religious belief that you hold in good faith as a religious belief really isn't what you believe.
It is the state which is coming after me, and in the process violating the religious freedom of everyone. We must stop this trend now. If we do not, then who is next? In the providence of God, the case of Reverend Moon has become a rallying point for religious freedom in the United States. I stand convicted for no other reason than my religious beliefs and practices. I am to be punished for being who I am.
He will be not only the first religious leader sent to prison largely because of the tenets of his faith and the way it chose to organize its affairs. He will also be the first person in this country in at least a quarter century to be sent to jail for an alleged tax violation where the appellate judges could not even agree among themselves as to the tax standards applicable.
And we've come up with a conclusion that if we do not hang together in these religious issues, then someday we'll all hang separately.
This isn't the Soviet Union, isn't Poland, it isn't Afghanistan, this is the United States of America.
Reverend Moon was denied the right to choose a bench trial. The judge refused to hear crucial evidence. The jury was given carte blanche to judge beyond rightful limits. The result was the conviction of a clergyman who conducted church business in the very manner prescribed for Roman Catholic bishops and Baptist ministers. As Reverend Moon serves an 18-month sentence in a Connecticut federal prison, he may well wonder how many others will join him for practicing the tenets of their faith. When they hit the beaches at Normandy, it didn't matter your religion, your politics, your race. You just hung on and fought together, side by side, for freedom. These brave men and women paid the price for our freedom. It's up to us to preserve liberty. It doesn't matter your politics, your religion, your race. We must stand side by side in the battle to keep what was so painfully and dearly won.
It doesn't matter what your religious or political persuasions are. Thousands of coalition members of the most diverse background have proven that we can work together to make this effort a success. My friend, your participation in this effort not only assures your future, but the future of generations to come. So again, thanks for your call or letter. You are making it work.
The startling cases you have just seen are only a few of the hundreds pending in courts across America right now. The men and women who have dared to speak out for their religious freedoms have come under heavy attack from the government, from the media, and sometimes even from their own families. Yet these people are standing up for your rights as well as theirs. You can help them turn the tide to regain our religious liberty today by writing The Coalition for Religious Freedom, 325 Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast, Washington, D.C., 20003. Act now. When you write, you will receive this dynamic newspaper, the Religious Freedom Report, yours absolutely free for 6 months. Here is the news behind the news, where the facts speak clearly for themselves. You'll read eye-opening stories about humanism, America's newest religion, the growing trend toward church taxation, and the media's influence on public opinion. What's more, you'll read what you can do to help. You can add your voice to thousands of people just like yourself who are already taking back their freedoms. Write today. Show that you care about the future of this great country. Act now and protect your constitutional rights to freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and freedom of religion. Write to The Coalition for Religious Freedom, 325 Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast, Washington, D.C., 20003. Help make this a nation of liberty and justice for all.
Greg Dixon and the men and women you have met in this program are all champions of freedom. Today, you and I stand together with these brave people, standing for justice, liberty, and freedom for all men. The Coalition for Religious Freedom is helping protect the very foundations of our nation. United, we stand. Divided, we fall. Continue to call. Be a champion of freedom. Stand tall and courageous. Let us shine forever the flame of truth and equality to the world. America, the home of the brave, the land of the free.